Hi everyone, and welcome to Autism and Neurodiversity Coaching's Neurodiverse Universe podcast with myself, Ben Holmes from Autism and Neurodiversity Coaching. Today's guest is Emma Victoria, who is a parent, preteen and teenage coach. So welcome, Emma.
Hello.
So as we always do, we'll get into the questions and then see where that takes us. I mean, many of our sort of guests on the podcast, are neurodivergent, so they've got ADHD, autism, and naturally we sort of go on all different tangents, which makes for each podcast being different. So, the first question is, what I normally ask is, when were you diagnosed as, either being autistic or ADHD, etc. So in your case, I believe you're on the waiting list for ADHD. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So I haven't got a formal diagnosis, but I've been on the waiting list now for about 20 months. And this really has come off the back of my daughter being diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 12. So that was about 3 years ago. So when she got a diagnosis, I did lots of study, lots of research, and then started noticing that there were similarities in the way that we did things, how we thought, feelings, etc., and how we respond to certain situations. So it was put to me by a clinical advisor that I should perhaps get assessed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of parents have been down the same path. They've seen that the daughters or sons have been diagnosed, and see, as you've said, see the similarities yourself as well.
Yeah.
So what would what would a diagnosis of ADHD mean to you? Would you say?
I think for me, it would be to see what support could be offered to me. I'm 50 next month, so I am who I am. I've lived with who I am. I've accepted who I am. It's not always been, easy. When I look back at school reports, things like that, it's wished Emma would have concentrated more. Emma needs to stop daydreaming. Emma needs to listen more carefully. All these sort of things. I've had a relatively successful career and life. So, I've gone to university, I've got my coaching business, I've got everything I need. I own my own house, car, etc. So I've sort of bumbled my way through, I suppose, different struggles, and found sort of ways to manage my symptoms myself. But if I could find something that perhaps I've not tried that they could offer me, then that would be helpful. And I think in terms of my daughter, my mum and dad, I think it would be useful perhaps and may benefit them in understanding how and why I do some of the things I do. So those are my reasons.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, normally the question I ask at this stage is, how did knowing that you ADHD change your life? So a bit of a similar question to the last one, really, but would you say it would change your life much? Well, has it changed your life much knowing what you know about ADHD now? And do you think it will change your life much sort of moving forward, post-diagnosis?
I think when my daughter was diagnosed, I did, I took some courses, did a lot of reading around it, and I implemented things that weren't in my life before, such as bringing in meditation, such as making sure every single day that I get outdoors and walk for a couple of hours every single day without fail. And just those two things have made a huge difference to, I don't get so overwhelmed. I'm not as emotional. Um, yeah, I'm naturally just sort of calmer. Um, Sleep hasn't really improved, but there have been benefits to those two things. Putting those into my life, and moving forward. In the next couple of months, I'm putting myself on a Vedic meditation retreat. And so again, lots of research into that, and I'm working with a lady in Australia, Sarah Susak. So yeah, that's really exciting, and I know that is going to have massive benefits to my life. So I
Yeah.
think it's sort of researching, knowing what other people have done. And for me, it's been about testing, trying, and again with my daughter, what works for me might not work for her, and vice versa. But my daughter, she has crystal therapy in her life now. She does lots of art. She also meditates. So again, and sport is a big thing for her in her life. So yeah, we both manage, as I say, our symptoms
Yeah.
differently, but yeah, and it's improved life.
Hmm. No, that's really interesting what you said about meditation, because having spoken to a lot of people with ADHD, it can be quite hit or miss. It can be like, amazing for them, or the opposite, where they just can't do it. So with yourself, because there's alternative sort of forms and methods of meditation as well. So when you say meditation, how does that sort of work for yourself? Is it like traditional, or how when you say you do meditation, um how do you find that whole experience? Obviously it's a positive one from what you've said, but I'm just trying to understand, because like I say, some people with ADHD, they just cannot concentrate, or they cannot calm themselves down enough to meditate, whereas others think it's amazing. So be interested to hear your thoughts on the intricacies of that.
Well, I've probably experienced everything you said. So, yeah, if you like the more traditional sort of sitting down or lying down and that type of meditation where you're focusing on breathing, I find really difficult. I
Mm.
find that, I've got thoughts sort of all over the place. I find it extremely hard. So, when I say meditation, there's two things that I do. So when I get out every day and take my dog for a walk, part of what I do, I'm really lucky. I'm in the countryside, so there's the fields all around me, and I do like a walking meditation. So
Yeah.
I find the movement really helps me to sort of focus and be mindful of how I'm walking, feet on the ground, etc. So that is helpful for me. I do try and do a sort of 10 to 15-minute guided meditation, that you can get on all these apps,
Yeah.
sort of before bed, which is helpful. But as I say, the reason why I'm going on this retreat and having one-to-one teaching is because I want to learn how to properly calm my mind,
Mm.
so that when I come out of the meditation, I remain sort of calm and can apply that calmness to sometimes what can be a bit of a chaotic world.
Yeah.
So yes, meditation works for me in the sense in the moment when I'm doing it, but
Mhm.
when I come out of it, it's like I'm not necessarily calm in my mind anymore. So yeah, it's for me, it's about learning. So that's why I'm doing, that retreat to
Mhm.
try and really, she's brilliant. She's, an inspirational woman, and I know, trust totally that she'll be able to get me to where I want to be.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I think retreats are, I mean, I've not done one myself. It's sort of been in my mind, and I think it could really help a lot of people, whether you're ADHD or not. But I think
Mm.
there are definitely huge benefits of that, and it's committing to doing it, isn't it? It's saying, right, I'm going to do this, and then when you do it, you don't, you do it properly. You don't allow yourself to do things that you normally do. You just commit to the process, and see how it goes, I think.
Absolutely.
So in terms of sort of ADHD, and you know, I mean, you can speak a bit about your daughter, I guess, or yourself. You know, how have others responded, if you've told anyone, that is, to you saying, you know, I think I've got ADHD. What sort of response have you had from those around you?
Um, really mixed, to be honest. When I've told older people, when I say older, I'm saying probably, you know, 70s,
Mhm.
it's almost, oh, I feel really sorry for you that, you know, your daughter's been diagnosed with that.
Yeah,
So they, you know, it's quite a negative response. Um, when my daughter has sort of come out and told friends, you know, they're just like, well, we knew anyway, you know, of course you are, type thing.
yeah,
So no, my parents have been, you know, supportive in terms of, we don't quite understand what it is, what can we do, you know, that can help her, you know. So on the whole, it's been, you know, positive, helpful. But yeah, there have been a number of people also who have felt really sorry for me. You know, I don't know what their perception of what they think life is like in the house. Yeah, very mixed.
yeah. Makes a lot of sense, and I think, you know, there is that generation thing where, you know, we didn't have it in our day, and all that sort of stuff can come in, and it's just one of those, as time goes by, that won't be said as much. Eventually, it won't be said at all. But
Mm.
yeah, so it does make a lot of sense what sort of feedback you've had there.
I
Um,
think in schools nowadays, in the playground, you know, I don't think this is particularly the right response, but it is seen as a bit of a cool thing to have ADHD.
yeah,
You know, it's you know, you have responses such as, oh, I wished I'd got ADHD, you know, and you know, that'd help me, you know, revise better, or I'd be able to stay up all night and, you know, do whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
it's seen as a much more positive thing than, say, autism. There's a
yeah,
real stigma still, you know, in schools amongst children, especially teenagers with autism.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I can't say that's the case, Evan, but I do fully agree with that. I mean, me being both, I usually lead with ADHD now. Even though it was autism, the one that I found out first, I do. If anyone, if you know, I bring the subject up, I usually say I'm ADHD, and then depending on the response I get and where I am, who I'm speaking to, then I might say I'm autistic as well. And that's usually one where they're, oh my god, like, you're autistic, oh my god.
Mm.
Yeah, totally understand that, and I do think a lot of people see it as a cool thing now, in terms of ADHD. So yeah,
Just
totally get
lack
that.
of education, isn't it? You know, more needs to be done in educating, you know, from quite a young age,
Yeah,
um, in schools.
yeah, no, definitely. So I mean, you can't say it for yourself, but for your daughter, what's the support been like, um, since the ADHD died?
In terms of, I can remember the day it was done, you know, via video call like this, you know, and just said, you know, yes, you've got ADHD, and
Yeah.
then, you know, the call pretty much ended, and you are just left, you know, okay, what does that mean? First question, you know, my daughter says, well, can I be fixed? You
Mm,
know, and the professionals now disappeared, you know, and I'm left sort of answering this question, you know, and again, it was trying to change her perspective on that, you know. For her, she felt like there could be some pill or some medicine that she could take, you know, that would fix all of this. And of course, that isn't the way it works. So, yeah, that's where I had to then start studying and researching. The support wasn't there. Yes, she was put on waiting lists, She's had one workshop on anxiety, which was about 4 weeks in a group, which was, you know, I'd say 60% useful. 40% she said was a complete waste of time, but you know, that 60%, you know, she's probably utilized about 25%. We are still on the waiting list to chat about medication, so not actually have it given, just to have those talks. So we're 3 years now, and that's where we are. She's now in year 10, she's going into year 11 next year. So, you know, I wanted all this, if you like, all in place before she starts her GCSEs. But yeah, the waiting lists are just considerable. So again, we're looking at sort of diet. As I say, exercise is really important for her to sort of manage those symptoms. In terms of school, and sort of provisions to be put in place for Olivia, it's been they've been really good. I sat down with my daughter and said to her, where do you struggle? You know, we literally looked at the timetable, and she highlighted where she perhaps lost concentration, or, you know, and I looked at seating plans, this, that, and the other. And together we compiled a list of support that she needed. And I basically went in fairly ruthless and said, this is what I want done. You know, there's nobody that knows, you know, my daughter like she does. And, you know, I know from home that these things work. So yeah, quite unusual, I suppose. She has a sketchbook. She loves drawing, so she has a sketchbook in every single lesson. And when the teacher is talking, she sketches, because she's able to drown out any distractions, noise, anything else, and she's able to focus on the teacher. I mean, she's in year 10. There are still some teachers who still tell her off for having, you know, that sketchbook out, but you know, it is one of the support methods for her, and it does really, really work. She has bracelets, again, just for anxiety, you know, and concentration. And yeah, she's allowed movement breaks if that's what she chose. But again, for my daughter, if she was to get up, she doesn't want the questions. Well, why are you allowed to walk out? Why are you allowed to walk around the room? So she doesn't. So yeah, there's some masking there to a degree, and girls are pretty good at it. But yeah, you know, school has been good. They've inputted everything that I need. In terms of CAMS, it's just on waiting lists.
Yeah, no, that will make sense. And I think the bit where you said that she can get up and, you know, move around, have a break, but she doesn't do that because of what other people might say, and that's an important thing to point out. It's one of those, what can you do, because you're entitled to it, so you've got that, you're allowed to do that, which is great, but then you don't want to be seen as being singled out, you know, for getting special treatment and that sort of things, which is always going to be an issue. Well, at least for now. In the future, when the more people do understand, accept it, you're still going to get some people that moan. A lot of people naturally like to moan about things anyway. So
yeah,
I've seen the workplace, you know, if you get special things and, you know, why is he getting that or whatever. So it's I think that issue's a hard one to solve, to be honest. So in terms of yourself, it might be a hard one to answer, given it's quite new for yourself, I guess, to a degree. Is there any other sort of, however you word it, whether it's conditions, brain differences, whatever, that you have yourself, or that you think you may have, or have you not really had time to sort of explore that, I guess?
When I was very little, I suffered with massive anxiety. So anything that was new school or a new experience. So for example, you know, your first X-ray, for example. You know, I knew what an X-ray was, but the questions that would come into my head, you know, and ultimately, I mean, I must have drove my mum mad. You know, well, how many people are going to be in the room? How long is it going to last? When can I come home? Will it hurt? What will they find? When will I have the results? What if the results are this? You know, am I going to die? It was just constant, you know, to the extreme of worry and anxiety. That, you know, as I've got older, your world becomes bigger. You know, you're able to read about new things you might have to have, or you know, it's new experiences. You know, you tend to sort of research anyway, don't you, before you sort of book anything, so you have an idea. But I suppose things that are out my control, you know, things like surgeries, or, you know, sort of family crisis, you know, I'm more accepting of it. And yeah, that anxiety has dissipated over the years. I would say that I probably just have the normal nerves of anybody. I've suffered with depression in my early 20s, and again, that was due to a massive change. So I was at university, second year, course quashed. We all had to move from one university to another university, so all with different people, different tutors. It was a big mess. I was studying initially at home as well, so to have my last year of university away from home, you know, was quite a challenging thing. So yeah, I was diagnosed with depression. That led into panic attacks. So yeah, especially in public places, on public transport. But yeah, I think once I was established in work and I had a normal routine and knew that I was in control of it rather than sort of other people, that's when, you know, the depression disappeared, anxiety started to come down, and life became a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of ADHD, do you see that as a disability?
The young people and adults that I've worked with for, you know, over 25 years, and I have asked this question lots and lots of times over many years, and yeah, they say it's a disability, an invisible disability for sure. You know, because it impacts them every day, more than once or twice a day. You know, for what some people might think is quite a simple task, such as sticking to a morning routine, for example. My daughter suffers with time blindness, as many people with ADHD do. So trying to get her out the door for, you know, maybe a sporting event or whatever it might be, where you've got to be on time, can prove near impossible at times, even with, you know, we've had visual prompts in the past, we've had alarms, we've had things color coded, you've had me, you know, sort of just quietly just reminding her, you know, or me shoving a post-it note, you know. It's something she struggles with, as many people do, and people miss buses, transport. It has a knock-on effect then with their work. So yeah, and then they start feeling terrible about themselves, and it's something that they can't help.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, just sort of household tasks, you know, remembering to wash their uniform for work, you know, and they forget, and then there's no uniform, you know, it has a knock-on effect. So what might seem quite simple to, say, a neurotypical person is actually quite challenging. So absolutely, for sure, I think it's a disability.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, when I ask that question, I get, you know, a range of different things. You know, even that is quite divisive in itself. Some people say it's disability, some don't, some think it's depending on the environment and stuff. So there's lots of debates on that one. So I'd like to ask a few random questions because I like to just do stuff like every now and again. So, if you have one, what is your favourite colour?
Easy, it's green.
Okay.
And that's literally because I just love being outdoors. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've got 2 rooms in my house that are green, like a duck egg green, and then I've got more of a limey green. So yeah, I just love green. Love the sort of smell of just being in the countryside. So yeah, it makes me feel good, makes me feel calm.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think a few others have said that for similar reasons. You know, you can see it as easy to see the connection there between green and the outdoors. Um, whereabouts is it your base? Is that of interest? You say you obviously country. What areas are?
Leicestershire.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Um, so sort of middle of the country-ish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you will have any of these, but a lot of neurodivergent people have special interests. So, mainly, particularly autism, some with ADHD. Would you say you have any interests that are more, whatever the word is, prominent than what others would have?
Um, I suppose what I have found is that many people with autism and ADHD are quite arty,
Hmm.
and they're quite big, whether it's drawing or it's fashion or they love their crafts. Um, they tend to be interested in film, theatre, um, dance. I used to dance when I was young. Obviously, my background, my degree is fashion textiles.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I love the theatre. Um, love just the arts in general. So film's a big thing.
Hmm.
So perhaps that leans more towards some people with autism and ADHD. My daughter is a really good artist and she can really hyper focus as well, on her art.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And like I say, a lot of autistic ADHD people are quite creative, creatively minded. So if you could meet any, celebrity or famous person, past or present, um, who would it be and why?
I think because I'm on this journey of sort of finding out more about ADHD, autism, mental health struggles, particularly in children and young people. I'd like to meet Gabor Mate.
Oh yeah,
Have
yeah.
you? Have you? Yeah.
I missed the first word. Sorry, I missed the first. I had the second word before the first word for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Don't know why my
Um,
brain. Yeah,
have you
yeah.
have you heard of him?
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on.
So yeah, no, I was just going to say I've listened to lots of his interviews and podcasts and read articles, and I just think he has such a deep understanding of um, ADHD, autism, and mental health struggles that I just think that I could learn an awful lot. One as a mum, and perhaps the question always is, could I change my parenting to be more effective, with somebody, with a child with ADHD. And obviously the people that I coach, I think he could teach me, a fair bit. I'd be interested to know what advice he might have for young children who experience, things like anxiety, depression, stress, and other mental health challenges. I'd like to see how he'd answer that. And also the other big one, which we've touched on, is does he believe that society can better understand the struggles that people have with ADHD, and really what he um, could add to that, what he might suggest we need to be doing more of.
Yeah, yeah. I'll get you on that. You mentioned a minute ago, sort of how you can sort of adapt your own parenting, to your daughter now. She's got ADHD. Is that is that something you? Well, I guess from what you just said, you're actively looking at doing that, and do you have a sort of plan in your head of how that's going to happen? So, like, being ADHD doesn't mean they can't do quote unquote normal jobs or anything like that. But at the same time, it could also mean that she might be more inclined to do something on her own. So whether it's the art side of it, or working for herself, or freelance, or whatever. So that can obviously affect last few years at school. Then if she goes to college or uni or whatever, yeah, I don't know if you've got any extra thoughts on sort of that in general.
I think as a parent, right from when they're young, you try your best. You get things wrong sometimes, you get things right. You continue with the stuff that goes right, and then just when you think you've got it nailed, they change. So you've then got to rethink your parenting again anyway. Towards any child. Every child is unique and different anyway. So you're always parenting towards that particular child. When prior to my daughter being diagnosed, I always tried to work with her. What would help you? Would it help if we had a visual put on the front door? Would it help if a visual was put in the bathroom to help you stick to your routine? Sometimes she'd say, Mom, that's a complete waste of time. I'm just not going to look at it, wasting your time. So then I'll put it back on her and say, well, what do you think might help? Because the biggest struggle that I have is getting her out the door on time.
Yeah.
In the morning, it's not too much of a problem because we say good morning and goodbye, but that's about it. But, and she does get on with it. But when it's a little bit more unstructured, say a weekend, and it's not school, yeah, that's when she can really, really struggle. So that bit, me getting her out the door on time, is still a work in progress as me as a parent. But yeah, I found that open communication, discussing different struggles and working together really helps our relationship and how she moves forward. She's just turned 15. She wants more independence. She wants her own, opinion about things. And also, it's about me trusting that she's sort of, okay, you're going to deal with this on your own, and sort of trusting her to be able to do that. And if it does go a bit, Pete Tong, then we sit down, we address it, and we try and make it better for the next time.
Yeah. Just a few things you've said there. I think one of them is that I think it's really good that I think how to word it, you let her make the choices. So you give her advice and guidance, etc. But it's sort of led by her. So if something, as you said, if something doesn't work, where she said, I'm not going to look at that thing in the bathroom or whatever, rather than just forcing it on her, you sort of then say, okay, well, what would work for you? I think that's really good, because I know a lot of parents, or maybe not a lot, but some parents would sort of take the opinion, what I know better sort of thing, and then they'll be sort of stifled, and obviously it's not going to be good. It's not a good situation. So I think that's really, you're doing that. And you also mentioned about being late. I mean, it's something I struggle with horrendously. So yeah, I mean, there's that many things you can try. You can tell yourself, right, I need to leave 10 minutes earlier than what I actually need to, and all these sort of things, and that can work for some people. It doesn't necessarily for me, because then a lot of us we work on urgency, and sort of we need that deadline, that immediate deadline. Otherwise, it sort of doesn't help. And even then, you can still be 5 minutes late, and then you think, well, if I'm 5 minutes late, no one's going to die or anything like that. You know, if it's like a really big appointment, like you've got a hospital appointment, or like you're going on a flight or something, I think that tends to be easier to be on time for. It's more the sort of everyday normal things, I
Yeah.
guess. Is that something you struggle with yourself, or are you not that?
Um, well, I used to always be sort of late or by the skin of my teeth, you know, into sort of work or sort of turning up at events, that type of thing. It's something I didn't really um, observe until now. But
Yeah.
I obviously have managed that by now I'm
Mm,
super early to most things. So
yeah,
I give myself an awful lot of time. I know that, you know, I could have an extra half hour sometimes in bed or half an hour at home before I needed to leave. But
yeah,
it stops me from, I suppose, becoming too stressed,
mm,
you know, because I can control that. I can control, you know, getting out the door earlier than needed. And I'd rather be sitting the other end in a hospital car park or at work early than hitting traffic and me getting stressed and am I going to make it and what have you. So that's how I've managed it.
yeah.
But I wasn't always like that, you
Mm,
know. So perhaps that's just come with age, perhaps I don't know, and having more responsibility. I don't know.
mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's yeah, it's very logical. I mean, thinking myself, when I've been late for something, you know, I could have done exactly what you did, and then just if I've got things to do on my phone, like work things or whatever, just do them whilst I'm sat waiting, as opposed to the other way around where you're doing it before, then you leave late, and then you're stressing and the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can. It's a very fine line with things as well, with needing urgency and then constantly being stressed. Um, it can be very hard with things like that. So, in terms of your work, and there's quite a few things on this really. So you've said what you did at university, and then um, you've said you've had quite a successful career, which we'll come back to in a minute. So what is it you're currently doing, sort of work wise, at the moment? 'Cause I think you're doing a few different things, aren't you?
I do. So I work in a male prison, and I do some lecturing there. And then I'm also, as I say, I coach parents and preteens and teenagers, many of which have um, perhaps behaviour struggles, mental health, ADHD, autism. The parents might need a bit of support, perhaps in adapting their parenting.
Yeah.
Parents might need support in sort of understanding the way their ADHD teenager feels.
Mhm.
Um, it might be that things have got really difficult in the house, you know, and their child is displaying, you know, a lot of anger, and there's an awful lot of conflict, you know, communication between child and parent has just completely died. So it's about rebuilding all of that. Um, yeah, sometimes it's a bit tough, you know, sort of young people sort of going down the road of crime, you know, because of navigating those friendships or not knowing how to navigate those friendships sometimes. One of, I suppose, struggles that somebody with ADHD can have is that, and autism, I suppose, is the fact that, you know, they want to have friends,
Yeah.
but they also want to people please.
Yeah.
So saying no can be extremely difficult, even when they know actually that is not the right choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I help parents, as I say, and the teenagers try and reconnect, you know, and try and help them thrive as a family. you know, by guiding them, advising them, you know, looking maybe at their boundaries within the family, because if you have got a child who thinks differently, they want very clear, consistent boundaries. You know, they can't be wishy-washy, because that just adds to, you know, the many struggles they already have. So yeah, I help, as I say, families just work through all of that, you know, and how it works best for, you know, the values of the parents, and how it's going to, you know, just be more effective, and helpful in how they parent and, you know, navigate just normal adolescent struggles.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you said earlier on about, you know, having a successful career. So what I was thinking is, looking back now that you've learned about ADHD, you know, does that give you a different outlook on your past? So in terms of you being successful in your career, do you think there's any links with ADHD there? And sort of, well, obviously there is, but does that change your, you know, how you look back at it? So like prior to knowing about ADHD, you know, you may have thought, oh, I've had quite a successful career. Now you know you've got ADHD. Do you think that changed anything, or is it the exact same? Or do you see what I
I,
mean?
I think there's certain things that have held me back
Mm-hmm.
through not properly understanding myself at times. The anxiety was a big thing, and again, like many young children, you know, I was, you know, very concerned with how people might perceive me, how people might judge me. So I think from that point of view, it's held me back. I suppose what I'm saying is I've always almost been the person behind the camera, never up front, sort of doing presentations or, you know, sort of front of house. I've always been the person in the back because that's where I've been comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and there were barriers, I suppose, in terms of how I felt and overcoming certain struggles to be able to put myself, you know, at the front, and sort of be center of attention, I suppose. I found that really difficult. So I would avoid it where I could, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I would really find it struggle. I'd have sleepless nights when I'd have to do things like that, you know. And I wish if I'd have known now what I know, I think things could have been put in place in order to help me, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Um. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people late diagnosed have said a similar thing, that, you know, had the support, they've been able to do X, Y, and Z. And again, even that's a conversation. You know, some people diagnosed later in life, they're glad they did, because then they wouldn't push themselves as much. But then again, it's that fine line between, you know, having to go through hell as such.
Mm.
Side way, oh, the reason this happened was because I'm like this and whatever. Well, some people don't make it. Some people just crash.
Yeah.
So there's that side. So it's such a fine line, and obviously getting diagnosed at school has major benefits. But also there's negatives that can come with it as well, with
Of course
that.
there is, yeah.
So it's such a, um yeah, it's one of those, each person can have a different experience of that. So I mean, just in terms of your upbringing, is there, um yeah, well, is there anything you want to speak about with your upbringing in that sense? If there isn't, then yeah, I mean, you know, in terms of what we're talking about with anxiety, ADHD, etc.
I had a fairly, typical family upbringing. Both parents are still together. I had a younger sister, 4 years younger. Yeah, just very normal. Sort of more traditional type parenting. So dad, worked, and mum was mainly at home with us. But yeah, she's a very child orientated person. So there was lots of play, creative play out of boxes and, whatever could be found. We'd play games, we'd always be reading, it was, and she was brilliant, in terms of, listening and again, guiding and, just being there, reassuring. So she, mum was brilliant from that point of view, because as I say, I must have driven her mad with the amount of questions I must have asked about the unknown. Yeah, no, it was good. It was a good childhood.
Yeah. And something just said there about asking questions. So I would imagine you're quite curious. What else I sort of picked up on, or what I think I picked up on, is you seem quite detail orientated. Is that the case as well? And from some of the things you've said, would you say, or
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've been described as a perfectionist. I personally don't think I'm a perfectionist. I just like to do a job well. I like to be able to do my best. But again, it's that people's perception of me. I appear quite organized.
yeah,
Yeah, as I say, if you looked behind my kitchen cupboards,
yeah,
as I say, it's all hidden, if you like. But yes, it's a bit embarrassing when people open it up because they can't understand that my logic or lack of. Yeah, I've forgotten your question.
yeah. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I did the same thing myself on a panel last week. Actually, someone asked me a question, and I did the same as you were talking
It's
about.
gone.
So I'm just saying that you come across quite detail orientated. So, for
Yeah.
example, I mean, it makes sense to me because I did myself, but to others maybe not. So you said something earlier. You was on about your daughter going on that anxiety course thing, and I think you said you literally saying numbers. So you said like 60%, 40%, 25%. That's like something I would sort of say. But then when I've said that sort of thing, people around me have been like, "Why do you have to give numbers?" So that's stuck in my head with the detail sort of side.
Okay.
I mean, not alone in that. I know other people that would do that, but they tend to be ADHD, OCD, or autism, or whatever. So, yeah, that's interesting. But the other things you said as well. So, yeah, I don't know if you're going to add to that before I go on to the next bit or not.
That's not the numbers thing's not something that I was aware of. So
Yeah,
you've just, yeah, but listening to it, it's like, yeah, actually, I probably do that. But yeah, it wasn't something I was actively aware that I did. But yeah, now you've brought it up, I know that I do. But yeah, I think being an arty person and an artist, part of what we taught is to look. You look, and you observe. And then obviously being a teacher and I've worked in, young offenders, prisons. You've got to look everywhere all of the time. So I suppose it's in my bones, really. So yeah, even walking the dog, as I've said, I'm sort of looking and mindful of everything that, I come into contact with.
yeah,
So yeah, it's not, some of it is actively, obviously, working in a prison, you've got to know, what materials are out and this, that, and the other. You've got to. You're in a prison. Same when you're in a school. Especially where I worked, because many of them, they all had complex mental health needs, and sometimes, well, a lot of the time, that would come out in quite extreme behaviour. So you had to be aware and notice things and notice triggers and know how to manage that. And so yeah, I suppose it comes from observation,
Yeah.
looking, listening, and being active about that. So yes, I would agree that I'm a detail person for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else you said a minute ago, where using about your kitchen cupboards, etc. Yeah, I found that interesting because it's like some people call me really organised. I am in some ways, but completely not in others. And I think you're kind of like, well, I'm not saying about you, but I mean in general, you like can kind of unintentionally mask being organised. Like, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So, like, if people saying, "Yeah, you're organised," and you're like, "Well, if you see my kitchen cupboards, you'd think otherwise." But then, and I think that's the thing with being, ADHD, autism. Well, if you look at ADHD, you can be very organised with some things and very organised with others. So then
Yeah,
you can get in some circumstances, oh, she's really organised, and it's like, oh no, she's really not. So it can be that sort of thing there as well. I think a lot of people with ADHD might, or at least some people with ADHD may come across like that as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I've tried. People have said, "Oh, you're really organised." I'm like almost trying to convince them that I'm not. So it's like, well, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be saying, "No, I am organised." But yeah, and I'm really organised in some ways, like I say, but then others just
Yeah.
yeah. I just found that interesting as well. That whole dynamic. Um, so is there anything else you'd like to talk about, sort of ADHD related, or anything that we've sort of gone through today that's stuck in your head that you want to sort of point out?
I think for me, it's about, education. It's about education, educating teachers, parents, students, on all neurodiversities. There's just, a lot of grey areas, there's question marks, there's still stigmas. Um, and I think kids have a hard enough time,
Hmm.
so I think more support needs to be done.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, and I know there's a lot of, well, at least some people, companies trying to help with that, but we've still got a long way to go in general, and I still hear some horror stories from certain schools and stuff. So it's a long way to go, but there's more and more people trying to address that now, which is good. Usually, obviously, people who have the conditions themselves, and then they want
Yeah.
to help others out. Um, so yeah, really appreciate you being on the podcast. Um,
Thank you for having me.
no problem, and hopefully everyone listening enjoyed it. I'm sure they will do. So yeah, thanks for being on, and everyone for listening. I'll see you all next time. Thanks, Emmett.
All right. Thank you.